Hello, this is Christopher Walker. Today we're looking at the Cambridge English first exam. I'm going to concentrate on the speaking paper. So, here are some ideas about the paper. The speaking paper has changed quite a lot from previous versions. It does look more or less the same, but some of the details are very different, and we'll focus on those quite a bit in this short video. There are still 4 parts to the paper, opening with an icebreaker, which just asks some general questions about yourself, your personal likes and dislikes. And we look at the individual long turn, which is where you have a few pictures to look at and you talk for about a minute. Then the collaborative task, where you work with your partner, and then an extended discussion based on the topic introduced in part 3. In total you have about 14 minutes for the test. It's a little bit longer if you're in a group of 3. Bear in mind though that there are 2 or 3 of you in the test, so whilst it looks like a long time to be speaking, you're not going to talk for all of that time. You're going to have to work very hard to take advantage of what's available. So let's have a look at the exam room to start. When you go into the room, you'll see a table. You'll sit here and your partner will sit here, and then in front of you you'll find the person we call the interlocutor, and across from the interlocutor you will find the assessor. So who is the interlocutor? Well, the interlocutor is the person who asks the questions. They'll take your mark sheets at the beginning of the test, they'll ask you the questions, and they will keep track of the time. Now don't worry if they tell you to stop talking when your time is up. It's their job to keep the exam running on time. Whilst the rules say that you have only a minute to talk for part 2, for example, if the interlocutor lets you talk for much longer than that, they'd be at risk of losing their job. They give you 1 mark, and this is called global achievement. And this is a reflection of how well you do in the exam on a very general basis. What about the assessor? Well, the assessor doesn't speak to you. They say hello, they say goodbye, but that's it. Otherwise they keep silent. They listen to you and your partner and they grade your speaking. They look at a few different areas. They look at 4 areas, and for each area you need to achieve a mark of a band 3 to pass. But that's overall, and remember, for the exam as a whole, you don't need to pass every part. The first area they look at is grammar and vocabulary. And to think about your own grammar and vocabulary marks, I want you to think of some different questions. Can you use the kind of grammar that is expected at the B2 level? And this is going beyond present simple and past simple and looking more at past perfect, different conditionals. Do you make a lot of mistakes? And what kind of mistakes are they? Are they the sort of mistakes that stop people from understanding you? Are they low-level mistakes? For example, saying he like instead of he likes. When it comes to vocabulary, do you use vocabulary that is connected to the topic? And do you use expressions that are appropriate? When you're talking to your partner, do you use very formal language or something a little bit more informal that you would use when you're talking to a friend? Then they look at what we call discourse management. And this is about how well you can organise what you say. Can you talk for more than a few sentences without hesitating a lot? And when you hesitate, how does it make the people you're talking to feel? Do they feel uncomfortable because you're taking so long to speak? Can you organise yourself without repeating everything that you say several times? Can you use it, he, they, instead of referring to the original subject? Can you organise your thoughts into something like paragraphs, the same as you would in the writing? And can you put your thoughts in order using linking words like so, because, however, things like that? Next they look at pronunciation. You can ask yourself, when you talk, can the people who are listening understand what you're saying? Can you pronounce words so that their meaning is clear? For example, the difference between record, which is a verb, and record, which is a noun. Is your intonation appropriate? Can you use pronunciation to show a question, just like I did there? Or when you're asking a rhetorical question? Then they will look at interactive communication. Interactive communication is your ability to respond to what people say to you. Can you show the interlocutor that you understand the questions you're asked? If you need help, you can ask the interlocutor to repeat the question. They might have a backup question that uses a rephrasing, but beyond that, unfortunately, you don't get much help in this exam. Can you keep talking without needing somebody to help you with further questions? And can you include your partner in your discussion? A really good idea here is to link what you've heard to what you want to say next. You can say things like, "That's true," and in fact, boom, boom, boom. And here you link what you heard to what you want to say. And can you work with your partner towards doing the task that you have been set? Can you work together in a team? So let's have a look at the different parts of the paper. The materials here can be found in the link given in the description to the video. Again, it's the handbook or specifications PDF available through Cambridge. Just follow the link below and you'll be able to get to it. So the icebreakers to help you into the exam. When you were waiting outside the exam room, you were probably talking to people in Polish, thinking in Polish, whatever language it is you speak. And then you go into the exam room, suddenly you have to speak English and only English. So this is the chance for you to ease yourself in. It's like getting into a hot bath. However, it's still a good chance to use some good English. You'll be asked a few questions about everyday topics. You will also be asked where you come from. Now, when you're asked where you come from, don't spend too long talking. Just say, "I'm from Bielsko, I'm from Munich, I'm from Singapore." Something very simple, move on to the next question. So the questions here won't be too difficult, but you can still show off your grammar and vocabulary. When you answer the question, try to respond using grammar that's different to the question itself. So if they say, "What do you like?" you can say, "Well, I really enjoy doing something." That way it's still answering the question, but you're showing that you know a lot more grammar. This part is pretty brief. It only lasts about 2 minutes. So here are some example questions. If you have a partner with you, you can talk together about them. See how you can change the grammar and use nice vocabulary to answer them. Okay, part 2, the individual long turn. Here you have 2 pictures to talk about with a question connected to them. You have to talk for about a minute. Then your partner has a short question about the same pictures, but now only has 30 seconds to speak. But 30 seconds is a long time. In the past, this was only 20 seconds. You had 20 seconds to talk, and really that was enough time for 1 or 2 sentences, and then the interlocutor would take the next candidate into the question. However, now that you have 30 seconds, you really have a good chance to show to the assessor that you were listening to your partner. So link what you want to say to what you heard from your partner. When you're talking about the photos, don't waste time describing them. This is a B2 level exam, not an A2 or B1 level. The interlocutor can see the pictures, your partner can see the pictures, so spend your time answering the question instead. And whatever you do, don't say "on the first picture," say "in the first picture." So, if you're stuck for things to do, here's a simple technique. Say something about the first picture connected with the question. Say "whereas," and then say something relevant about the second picture. That completes the task. That's all you have to do. So now I'll give you the opportunity to try the task. For this, I'd like you to time yourself. A lot of people don't really know how long 60 seconds is. So it'd be a good idea to put a stopwatch in front of you and see how much you can actually say in 60 seconds. Then have a look at the question that would be asked to your partner and see how long you can talk about that for. So moving on to part 3, this is the collaborative task. So here we find the biggest change to the speaking paper. So you have to talk first of all with your partner for about 2 minutes about a task. Then you're stopped by the interlocutor and given a decision to make. You're not told what the decision is going to be until this stage, and then you have 1 more minute to talk. So 2 minutes isn't a long time. You're given a little kind of a picture. It's just text now rather than photos. But you're given a task to talk about. For example, what people might find difficult about having a holiday abroad. And then 5 or 6 boxes with text ideas sent around. So talk about the first box, ask your partner's opinion, and then move on. There isn't much time in these 2 minutes to talk in depth about every different part of the task. When you're asking your partner, try to make your questions sound as convincing as possible. I couldn't agree with you more doesn't sound very natural, so it's difficult to do in a way that will give you a bonus to your pronunciation score, for example. So now I'd like you to try the task, and it works best if you have somebody to talk with about this. So try and find somebody else who's preparing for the exam or who speaks English, and have a look at the task. Time yourself, again, like in part 1. Put a stopwatch in front of yourself, and at the end of those 2 minutes, see how far you got. Now it doesn't matter terribly if you don't finish the task. If after 2 minutes you've only talked about 2 or 3 of the different tips, it's not the end of the world. It might even be better to do this well than to talk about all of them, but in too brief a manner. However, if you've only talked about 1 of the text tips, or you've lost the subject, you've started talking about something completely irrelevant, that's not as good. And then we come to part 4. And in part 4, we extend the discussion based on the topic introduced in part 3. So you talk for about 3 or 4 minutes about the questions that are given to you by the interlocutor. The interlocutor might ask each candidate a question in turn. If one candidate was very quiet in part 3, the interlocutor might ask them first to give them the chance to speak, and then ask their partner, what do you think? Or they might just kind of wave their arms, which suggests that you answer together. So this is the last part of the exam, but it's really important that you remain switched on. Put everything else behind you. If you had a bad part 2 or a bad part 3, you still have these few minutes to show the examiners just how good your English is. So relax into the conversation, but still take it as seriously as you can. One good area you can work on is maybe reporting what you hear your partner say and then expanding on it, taking it in a new direction. It's not just a matter of agreeing and disagreeing, but building a conversation. So again, try the task, work with your partner, see how long you can take one of the questions and talk about it for. Expand into different directions. You might not have the chance to do this in the exam, but just in terms of speaking skills, it's quite useful if you can do this sort of thing. So here are a few last tips to help you in the exam. The exam will go really quickly. 14 minutes looks like a long time, but it goes in the blink of an eye. But remember that it's still worth 20% of the whole Cambridge English First certificate. So take it very seriously. Work hard to include your partner in parts 3 and 4. Sometimes you'll find you're working with a very shy partner and you'll ask questions and get nothing back from them. But don't give up. Still ask them questions, because it's really the effort that counts. And don't worry about the relative strengths or weaknesses of your partner. Even if they are not as good as you or better than you, it doesn't matter. The examiners are very well trained and they will grade you based on the grading patterns, not based on you and your partner. And then finally, before the test, look through your notes and think about some of the things that you really want to work into the conversation and into the speaking tasks. Think of specific vocabulary to talk about your own interests and hobbies and your life experiences. If you decide you want to use a particular set expression, you will find a chance to use it in the exam itself. Okay, thank you very much.